A gardener who meditates with each breath while planting seeds. Part 1. The Quiet Man by the River.
In a secluded village cradled beneath the emerald folds of the eastern mountains, where the air hummed with the scent of pine and damp earth, lived a man named Tenzin. His presence was not defined by title or power, but it rippled through the very air, a silent prayer in motion. Each morning before dawn, as the first whispers of light painted the sky, he would light a beeswax candle. Its warm, honeyed glow would chase away the lingering shadows in his small window, revealing the cool mountain air gently brushing his face. His breaths were not merely inhalations and exhalations. They were deliberate, slow, reverent, each one a resonant bell ringing through the silent chambers of his body. He did not meditate to escape the world's clamor, but to enter it more fully, to feel its pulse and rhythm. When the candle burned down to a stub, its flame a final, flickering sigh, he would rise, his joints moving with a practiced grace. A deep, humble bow to the earth acknowledged its ancient wisdom before he stepped barefoot into his garden. The garden was small, yet vast in spirit, a living tapestry woven with intention. Rows of vibrant herbs, wild, untamed wildflowers, and plump, promising vegetables unfolded like verses of a sacred text. The soil, a deep, nourishing black, pulsed with life, enriched by years of compost, infused with the quiet love of Tenzin's hands, and alive with a profound, unspoken listening. Birds, usually skittish, came not just for the scattered seeds, but for the profound silence that emanated from the garden's heart. Bees hovered, their golden forms buzzing like diligent monks in sun-dappled air. Before Tenzin planted a single seed, he would close his eyes, holding the tiny promise of life between his thumb and forefinger, feeling its smooth, unassuming shape, as if learning its very story. He would breathe in, feeling a deep, abiding gratitude for the miracle of life held within that minuscule casing. And as he breathed out, he would release all control over outcomes, all expectations of perfection. "You are not mine," he would whisper, his voice a soft rustle of leaves. "You are free to become what you are."
Part 2. The Child with the Restless Heart.
One spring, as the mountain valleys burst forth in a riot of color, a boy named Arun burst into Tenzin's life like a sudden, fierce summer gust. His mother, Mira, her face etched with the thin lines of sorrow and endless stitching, pleaded with Tenzin, her voice a raw whisper. "He cannot sit still. He fights in his sleep. There is a storm in him, a wildness I cannot tame." Tenzin looked into Arun's eyes, and in their depths he saw not mischief or defiance, but a vibrant fire misdirected, yearning for a purpose. "Let him come," he said, his voice calm as a still pond. "The garden will speak to him." The boy arrived with clenched fists and eyes narrowed into wary slits, his small body radiating a palpable defiance. "I don't want to be here," he snapped, his voice sharp like a broken twig. "Gardens are boring." Tenzin, unperturbed, simply handed him a seed, small and unassuming, a tiny brown speck in the boy's angry palm. "This is you," he said, his gaze gentle yet steady. "Let's find where you belong." The days that followed were long, stretching out beneath the vast mountain sky. At first, Arun stomped through the carefully tended rows, scattering seedlings and deliberately spilled water, his frustration a visible cloud around him. Yet, Tenzin never scolded, never raised his voice. He simply kept planting, his breath rising and falling with the steady rhythm of waves on a shore, an unshakable presence. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Arun began to mirror him. He sat still for a little longer each day, his restless energy gradually settling. He stopped yelling when an errant gust of wind knocked over a pot, his initial burst of anger softening into sighs. He began to notice the intricate dance of ants marching in perfect, unwavering lines, the cool, comforting sensation of rich soil beneath his fingertips, the way a single dewdrop clung to a spider's web like a tiny jewel. "The world is quieter here," he said one morning, his voice softer than Tenzin had ever heard it. "That's because you've started listening," Tenzin replied, a gentle smile touching his lips.
Part 3. The Dying Tree and the Mayor.
At the very heart of the village, a silent sentinel stood an ancient banyan tree. Its roots, thick and gnarled, reached like an old man's hands deep into the earth, entwined with generations of stories. Lovers had stolen secret kisses beneath its sprawling shade. Children had laughed, their joyful shouts echoing as they climbed its mighty limbs, their dreams woven into its sturdy branches. But now a hush had fallen over the grand old tree. It withered, its once vibrant bark cracking like old parchment, its leaves brittle and skeletal against the sky. The village council gathered, their faces grim, their voices hushed with concern. "We must cut it down," declared the mayor, a pragmatic man in stiff, polished boots, his words echoing with a chilling finality. "Or inject it with chemicals," another suggested, his brow furrowed with worry. "We can't lose our symbol, our connection to the past." Tenzin, silent throughout the impassioned debate, offered no opinion, no solution. That night, under the cloak of a starlit sky, he walked to the ailing tree and sat beneath its dying branches. He placed his palm gently against the rough, scaling trunk, closing his eyes, a silent communion. "I am here," he whispered, his voice a balm in the quiet night. "Speak if you wish." He sat there each day, not seeking to fix, but simply to be present. He watered the roots gently, mindfully, watching, waiting, his patience a testament to his faith. Curious at first, then drawn by the quiet reverence, others began to come. Some brought flickering candles, their small flames dancing in the twilight. Some brought only their silence, a shared understanding. Children, their small hands reaching, hung brightly colored wind chimes on the lower branches, their melodic tinkling a gentle prayer. Women, their voices soft and haunting, sang lullabies from long ago, their melodies weaving through the air like ancient threads of comfort. Something profound stirred, not just in the ancient tree, but in the very heart of the village. They remembered that tending is not always fixing, that healing often begins with presence, not intervention. They remembered that love listens before it acts, that true wisdom lies in observation, not hurried solutions. The tree did not return to its full youthful glory, but it stood, a testament to their collective care, for 10 more years. Its shadow remained, a quiet blessing, a symbol of resilient life, sustained by collective love.
Part 4. The Seeds of Grief.
One year, the rains were cruel, a relentless torrent that brought only sorrow. First, a long, parching drought cracked the earth, stealing moisture from the very air. Then the skies opened, unleashing devastating floods that drowned hope and life alike. Tenzin's vibrant basil wilted into despairing husks. His plump melons rotted on the vine, their sweetness turned to decay. The garden, once a radiant tapestry of life, looked like a battlefield of green ghosts, shattered and desolate. Arun, now a lean, thoughtful teenager, was distraught, his young face etched with a pain Tenzin recognized. All our work, was it for nothing? Tenzin knelt beside a broken stem, its life force drained, its vibrant green faded to brown. "Nothing is wasted," he said, his voice calm, yet imbued with the profound understanding. Not the rain, not the failure, not the grief. That evening, as the last light bled from the sky, he brought out old, precious seeds, sacred basil, black sesame, the mystical moonflower. Each one held the promise of renewal, a tiny capsule of hope. "Let's plant with our sadness," he said, his eyes meeting Arun's. "Plant with sadness?" Arun asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Is that possible?" "Grief is fertile," Tenzin replied, his voice a gentle lesson. "It softens the soul, making it receptive to new growth." As they worked, their hands moving in rhythm with the falling dusk, Arun wept. Tears he had buried deep within himself for years, tears that had remained unshed since his father's passing. And the parched soil of the garden drank them all, transforming sorrow into the promise of new life.
Part 5, the last season.
Time, like the relentless mountain wind, never rests. Tenzin's hands, once strong and nimble, grew thin and translucent, his breath slower, a faint whisper in the air. He could no longer dig, no longer coax life from the earth, so Arun, now a man of quiet strength, took up the spade, his movements mirroring the grace of his teacher. The garden remained, not just Tenzin's sanctuary, but now a community's sacred duty, a living testament to shared purpose. People came, not just to harvest the bounty of the earth, but to breathe, to kneel, to pray with their hands in the soil. Children who once recoiled from the sight of worms now carried them with a newfound reverence, understanding their vital role in the cycle of life. Mothers, their hearts full, left bundles of nourishing food by the garden gate, an offering of gratitude. Even the mayor, his pragmatic nature softened by years of observing Tenzin, found himself planting marigolds, their bright faces a cheerful splash of color. Tenzin passed on a day when the clouds, soft and ethereal, looked like feathers drifting across the endless blue sky. He sat in his garden, bathed in the gentle warmth of the sun, a small seed resting in the palm of his hand, a final, tangible connection to the earth he loved. He smiled, a peaceful, knowing expression, exhaled his last breath, and did not inhale again. They buried him beneath the ancient banyan tree, its branches, though weathered, still offering solace and shade. Arun scattered delicate lavender seeds above his resting place, their gentle fragrance a fragrant tribute. "He taught me that death is just another seed," he said, his voice clear and resonant, carrying Tenzin's wisdom into the future.
Epilogue, the breath of the earth.
Years rippled on, flowing like the mountain river. The garden grew wilder, richer, its beauty untamed, yet profoundly intentional. Pilgrims came from far and wide, scholars seeking ancient wisdom, wanderers yearning for solace, broken souls carrying their unspoken burdens. They didn't always understand what they were seeking, their desires often unformed and nebulous. But the moment they entered the garden, something shifted within them. Their shoulders, hunched with the weight of the world, dropped. Their breath, often shallow and hurried, slowed, deepening into a rhythm that mirrored the gentle pulse of the earth. Time itself seemed to hold its breath too, suspended in the serene embrace of the garden. A weathered wooden box by the garden gate held a simple, profound message, carved with careful hands by Arun. Breathe, plant, let go. And above it, Tenzin's timeless words etched into the very wood. Plant as if you are the earth itself, remembering how to breathe. And so they did. With each seed they carefully placed into the soft, dark earth, they planted presence, a mindful connection to the moment. With each slow, deliberate breath, they remembered the sacredness of life, its ephemeral beauty. And with each season, the garden grew, not just in soil, but in the collective soul of the community, a living testament to Tenzin's enduring legacy.